everyone, so it is time for another makeup inventory update. I film these videos every 6 months. So my last one was at the end of 2020 slash the beginning of 2021. So basically I'm gonna go through each makeup category, and before I get started, first of all, I don't include mascaras just because I usually only have one mascara and then like a backup at a time. So I just find that unnecessary. And my makeup inventory has also changed a little bit because of the way that I decided to count the products, but I will talk about those specific categories that have changed when I get to them. And other than that, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So the first category we have is primer. And at the end, or I guess the beginning of 2021, I had 6 primers. So this can be hydrating primers, pore filling primers, any type of makeup primer. And my goal then was to have 2. So the goals I'm going to be talking about, obviously at the beginning of 2021, I set goals that I wanted to hit by this time. So my goals aren't necessarily my end goal numbers. They're just the numbers that I want to hit by the next time I do another makeup inventory update. But obviously some of these goals, because I am getting so low in my numbers, will be sort of my end goal. So I will also discuss those as we go. So I had 6 face primers and now I have 5. My goal is to have 2. I don't know if I will end up with 2 for a while because I have some that just take a really long time to go through, like a face oil that I count as a primer, and also a pore filling primer, which I tend not to use pore filling primers, so I have those 2, and then like a couple hydrating primers. So my goal is really to have 1 hydrating primer in my collection at once, but I put in 2 just because I do still have that pore filling primer that I'm just slowly trying to make my way through, and I'm not trying to force myself to use it because that's not really fun. And then the next category we have is foundation. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 11 foundations. My goal was to have 8, and right now I do have 8. So I hit my goal, which is really great. I actually hit my goal on a lot of these, which I'm really happy about. But now my goal is going to be to get down to 3. I just find that I don't need so many foundations because, especially right now, I haven't been wearing any foundations at all, and if I am, it's a really, really light coverage foundation. So my goal is to have like 1 more medium coverage foundation and then like another skin tint type of foundation and probably just like another lighter coverage foundation, just so that I have a few in my collection to rotate through. So my end goal for foundations will be to have 3. I don't think I really want any more than that once I finish off some of the foundations that are already in my collection. And then the next product we have is concealer. So at the end of 2020, or beginning of 2021, I had 7 concealers. My goal was to have 4 concealers by this time, and I actually only have 2 left in my collection. So I have my Oma Beauty concealer and my Juvia's Place concealer, which the Juvia's Place concealer is super full coverage, and it's also a little bit too light for me, so I tend not to reach for that. But I really, really love my Oma Beauty concealer, which is one I probably will want to repurchase after I finish it up, but I'm nowhere near finishing another concealer. I just actually recently finished one in one of my project pans. So I only have 2 concealers in my collection right now, but I do want to finish off at least 1 more before I purchase any. So my end goal with concealers is just going to be to have 2 in my collection. I find that I wouldn't really need more than that. Obviously, I can only use 1 at a time. Maybe I would like a more light coverage concealer and then a more medium coverage concealer because I just tend not to reach for those full coverage products, but I think it would be good to have a couple different concealers in my collection. The next category is powders. At the beginning of 2021, I had 11 face powders. My goal was to get down to 6, and right now I only have 9. So I went down from 11 to 9, which is still good. The numbers are still going down. But I do want to only have like 2 powders in my collection, probably some type of finishing powder and then a mattifying powder. I might change this to 3 to be like a pressed powder, a loose powder, and then some type of finishing powder. So I definitely do want to get my powders done. This is one category that I am working on, but I find that powders aren't super quick for me to go through. I am pretty close to finishing a couple pressed powders, but especially loose powders take me forever to go through, and I do have quite a few loose powders in my collection, so I will just slowly be going through those. Obviously, I'm not purchasing anything this year. I am on a no buy, so I literally have not purchased like one makeup product this year. And then we have brows, and brows is another category sort of similar to powder, where I'm just trying to finish up everything I have, because my end goal is just to have 2 brow products, one brow gel, and then like one type of brow pencil to fill in my brows with. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 5 brow products. My goal was to have 2 brow products, like I mentioned, and I still have 5 brow products. Right now, there is one in my project pan. It's not one of those really thin ones, so that one is taking me a really long time to go through. I've really just been focusing on that one, so I haven't used up any other brow products. And I do have my NYX micro brow pencil, which only has a tiny bit of product left, so I have 5 brow products still, but pretty soon I will be finished with a couple of them. Next we have bronzers, which is a category in my collection I'm not really worried about, and is probably the one that is, or one of the ones that is the most under control. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 7 bronzers. My goal was to have 4, and right now I actually have 8. So I did declutter a face palette, but I took the bronzers out of that face palette and pressed it into a single compact. Also, this is where my makeup inventory sort of changed because of the way I decided to count my products. So the only categories that changed were my bronzers, blushes, and highlights because of the way I decided to count my collection. So I changed it up a little bit in that the magnetic cheek products that I have, so it's mostly all cheek products from ColourPop, my magnetic blushes, bronzers, and highlights that I have in sort of a face palette. So I was counting it as a face palette, and I decided to count those as single blushes, bronzers, and highlighters just because I had so many face palettes in my collection. So I found that obviously the bronzer category that I count in my makeup inventory is just my single compact bronzers. It doesn't include the bronzers that I have in face palettes, and same with blushes and highlighters. So I found that those numbers sort of weren't as accurate, because I could have 10 bronzers in my makeup inventory, but then I would have 10 more bronzers just in my face palettes. So I decided to count my magnetic cheek products as like single bronzers, blushes, and highlights. So all of those numbers did increase without me actually bringing products into my collection. So this is where you're gonna see not as much difference and maybe not as much progress as I would have liked because of the way I changed how I was counting my products. So like I said, for bronzers, I had 7, and now I technically have 8 because I depotted that one, and I think I added 1 into this category because of the one I had in a magnetic face palette. So my goal with bronzers is going to be to have 4, which I feel like is still a lot, but I know I'm not going to be down to that number for a pretty long time unless I end up decluttering products. And obviously I do have some face palettes still with bronzers in them, so this technically isn't all of the bronzers in my collection, which is where the makeup inventory gets a little bit tricky and deciding sort of the way to count products. But these are just going to be how my numbers are for now because I don't really have another way of counting them. And then for blushes, my blushes went up quite a bit because of the magnetic blushes that I had. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 26, and I actually now have 19. My goal was to have 15, and that is still my goal. So I went from 26 to 19, which is still really, really good, especially considering that I added more in because of those magnetic cheek products. So I am actually really happy with this number. I obviously did end up decluttering quite a few blushes, and I recently did a whole declutter series decluttering my whole collection. So that's the only reason you're seeing these numbers lower, because obviously I didn't finish up any blushes or highlighters or bronzers. And a lot of these numbers decreased a lot because of my decluttering. And then for highlighters, I had 20 at the beginning of 2021, and my goal was to have 15, and now I have 16. So I'm actually really, really happy with that number. I almost hit my goal, but my goal now is only to have 10 highlighters. And the way I am choosing my goal is just how I feel about my makeup collection right now. So right now, my highlighting collection is a little bit overwhelming to me. I feel like I can't get use out of all my highlighters, and I have 16 currently. So I feel like 15 would still be a little bit too many. So I dropped that number down to 10. So now my goal is going to be to have 10 highlighters, and I feel like that might be a good number, but we'll see how I feel when I actually get down to that number. And obviously this is tricky because obviously you have different types of formulas like powders and creams. So I want a good ratio of powders to cream in my collection. And right now in my collection, I know I don't have many creams. So those are types of products that I want to add to my collection, but I also don't want to increase my makeup inventory. So it gets a little tricky there where I want to try new formulas, but I don't necessarily want to bring in more products to my collection. So that is where I feel like I want to declutter more products, but I really love everything I have in my collection right now. At least at the moment, I may feel differently tomorrow or next week and decide to declutter more products. I don't know, that's just kind of how my brain works. And then we have face palettes. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 18, and now I actually only have 9 face palettes. My goal was to have 10, and I feel like that's still a lot, but my face palettes do include palettes that only have like 2 products in it. So like the Kosas Tropic Equinox Duo, that is a face palette. I count it as a face palette because it has sort of more than one product in it. I also have like the RMS Living Luminizer Glow Quad. So a lot of these face palettes are only duos. So I don't have a ton of face palettes in my collection. I think I only have 3 like big face palettes that are sort of the traditional that you would count as a face palette. So I only have 9 right now, which is a pretty good number, but I also know that I just don't reach for my face palettes. So my new goal is going to be to only have 5 face palettes, and I kind of want this to be a 5 smaller face palettes, so I don't really want to have any traditional type of face palettes in my collection that are a bit bigger because I know I just don't reach for them. Now for one of the most fun categories, at least I feel like, is eyeshadow palettes. This is always an exciting one and a tricky one to keep contained and under control. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 45 eyeshadow palettes. My goal was to get down to 40, which at the beginning of 2021, I felt like I really wouldn't be able to do that, and that I really loved every single eyeshadow palette in my collection. But I realized that just wasn't realistic to get use out of all of those palettes. And right now I actually have 32 eyeshadow palettes. So I'm really, really happy getting that number down so much. So I went from 45 to 32, and I still feel overwhelmed by my eyeshadow palette collection. I still feel like I can't get good use out of all of them. So my new goal is actually going to be to have 20 eyeshadow palettes. And I feel like this is a good number. We'll see how I feel when I actually get down to this number, if I feel like it is still overwhelming or not. So I have 32 at the moment, which I am okay with, but there's a few here and there I feel like I could declutter that I just don't get use out of and that aren't very unique and don't excite me. So I see this number going down in the future pretty much along with all my other numbers. And next we have single eyeshadows. So this is one I sort of struggled with because I knew I just never reached for my single eyeshadows, but I didn't want to just declutter them, and I still enjoy having them in my collection. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 26 single shadows, and now I only have 11. My goal initially was to get down to 15, so I'm really happy I got down to a lot less than 15. So like I said, now I have 11. This includes liquid shadows and just like single potted shadows. So my new goal is going to be to actually only have 2 single shadows. So I don't know how realistic this is. I feel like a better number might be 5 for right now. I'm actually going to change this to 5. So I have 11 in my collection right now, so I want to cut that about in half to 5. I just know I never reach for my single shadows, and I do have some loose pigments in my collection that I count as single shadows. So this category mostly consists of loose pigments and liquid shadows and a couple potted sort of like ColourPop Super Shock shadows, but I don't actually have any of those. They're the Ace Beauté little shadows. So I think that is all of my single shadows, and I may end up decluttering some of the loose pigments, I'm not sure. And also with the liquid shadows, I know that those do tend to dry out, so I may end up getting rid of a couple of those as well. But I would like this number to continue to decrease until I probably have almost none in my collection, just because I know I don't get use out of them. Next we have eyeliner, which you guys know I really never wear eyeliner. I don't think I've actually worn eyeliner in the past 6 months. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 11 eyeliners. My goal was to have 2, and right now I do have 2. So I hit my goal there, but like I said, in the past 6 months, I haven't worn any eyeliner. So my goal is actually to have 0, and I don't know if I'm going to end up finishing off the eyeliners that I have. I have a sort of dark forest green shade and a deep plum purple shade. So I like having those shades in my collection, but I just never reach for them. So we'll see if I end up decluttering them, or at least end up getting some use out of them within the next 6 months. Now moving on to lip products. For lip liners, I had 19 and my goal was to get to 15, and now I have 11. So I did declutter a few, and I'm happy with the amount of lip liners I have right now, except I feel like there are still a few like similar shades that I have in my collection that I want to finish off, but lip liners take so long to go through. So I don't know if I am going to end up decluttering any. I feel like I just want to organically finish some of them because I would rather like pan them than declutter them, obviously. But my goal is to have 6 lip liners in my collection, which I feel like is a good number and allows for a good range of shades. And then for liquid lipsticks, I don't wear liquid lipsticks very often. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 22 liquid lipsticks. My goal was to get down to 10, and I actually got down to 8, which I'm really, really happy about. Obviously, I decluttered a lot of them just because I know I just don't reach for liquid lipsticks, and there's other formulas that I prefer. So because I know I don't reach for them, my goal is going to be to only have 2 in my collection, which will probably end up being 2 of the NYX Soft Matte Lip Creams, because that formula is not like a traditional liquid lipstick. And I actually really, really like that formula and could wear it on a daily basis. So that is going to be sort of my end goal with liquid lipsticks, is to only have 2 of them. But the tricky thing with liquid lipsticks is I don't like the traditional liquid lipstick type formula, but there are other more comfortable liquid lipstick type of formulas on the market that aren't super drying and matte. Like I'm thinking of more of those blotted lip type formulas. So I am kind of interested in some of those. So I don't know if this number will end up going up depending on how my preferences change, but at least for now, my goal will be only to have a couple liquid lipsticks in my collection. And then we have just normal bullet lipsticks. At the beginning of 2021, I had 35. My goal was to get down to 25, and I now have 22. So I passed my goal on that one, which I'm really happy about. And again, bullet lipsticks take forever to go through, so those are tricky, and obviously it's going to take longer for me to lower that number because it takes so long to go through them. And like I said, I would rather use up and pan lipsticks than declutter them. But my end sort of goal for lipsticks, I think, will be to have 10 in my collection. So basically to cut what I have now in half, which sounds really good to me, and I feel like that would allow for a good range of lipsticks without being so overwhelming and having like so many of similar shades in my collection. And then the last category we have is lip glosses. At the beginning of 2021, I had 39 lip glosses, and out of all lip products, lip glosses are kind of like my weakness. So this one is probably gonna be the highest out of all of my lip product categories. So at the beginning of 2021, I had 39. My goal was to get down to 25, and I actually got down to 26, which is pretty good and I am happy with, but I find that it's still just too many. So my end goal with lip glosses is going to be to get down to 15. So I feel like that is doable. Lip glosses are a lot easier to finish, I feel like, than any other lip products. And lip glosses are my sort of favorite type of lip product, so I know I want to have more of those in my collection than any other type of lip product. And now for my total numbers. So at the beginning of 2021, so this is adding up all of the makeup products that I have in my collection, I had 308 products. My goal was to get down to 200 or less products, and right now I'm actually at 193. So I'm very, very happy with that. So obviously I exceeded my goal, and my new goal is actually to get down to about 100 products, which is where I feel like I will end up sort of capping it and not going very many less than 100, just because I'm not trying to have a super minimalistic collection. I still want that variety in my collection and those options because I do love makeup. I also love trying new products, so I know there's going to be products that I always want to try, so I don't want to sort of cut myself off in any way. But this year of my no buy has been sort of really helpful in helping me see my makeup collection and sort of how long it actually takes to use up makeup, and that I really don't need any more makeup products, but new products on the market and just trying new brands are really, really tempting me. So I'm kind of struggling with my no buy. I haven't cheated or broken it at all yet, and I don't intend to. But I am really, really happy right now with my makeup inventory, so I know I don't need to bring in any new products, at least until I finish off some other products. So I am happy with this for now. I still do want to get some of those categories a little bit lower, but there are also categories where I am at sort of where I want to be, which is really good. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. I hope it was interesting. I do love doing these sort of yearly updates with my makeup inventory. So I will do this again in another 6 months. And if you guys do videos like this or make YouTube videos at all, let me know down below in the comments because I would really love to check out your guys' channels. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. I do post new videos 3 times a week. So if you want to see more from me, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get notified every time I post. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.